Hello, today I'm going to show you how to paint rough water and the waves breaking onto the beach. And the first thing to do is to mix up all the colours that you can see in the surf. And I'm going to be unconventional and do the sky upside down because I want to go into the nooks and crannies of the breaking surf. Just go round all the nooks and crannies. This one I picked as a good example of rough water because it changes in height quite a lot. You've got the beach there and then it goes up quite a few feet. So you're painting all sorts of levels. I'm just going to go back on that a moment and just lose the edge a little bit. But it's here that the water is actually flicking off the top. I'm managing to do it with a brush, so that's all right. To do that the other way up will be much harder. So just keep going along. I'll just lose the edge a little bit as I've done further up. Now none of the water's level because it's all breaking. So now I'm going to turn it up the right way and do a little bit more to the sky. Tint it as I go. I'm going to change to a number 8 brush. I needed a smaller brush to give me control in the first instance. Just get really dark sky in so that the white surf shows a lot. You need sometimes to have the darkest dark in a picture next to the lightest light. The alternate colours stand out. So the next stage is to put the first line on, which is actually the beach, but because it's a stormy day it's not bright yellow, and that's got a lot of sand mixed up in the foam. I've got a number 1 brush. I'm just going to take the brush for a walk with the homemade grey, just diluting it slightly, because where this hits the sand there's a little shadow. So again, with a small brush, just go round. This will help the white look very prominent. There will be some more shadows to go in shortly, but before I rub the pencil back with all the nooks and crannies, I do think it's worth your while, if you can do it in the car quite easily or from a window, is to sit and draw waves. I spent several days in Spain once while it was stormy sketching all the waves, and you just sort of do it without thinking and work out the pattern. I'm going all the way along here because I want to separate it from the sand. Now the sand's very wet and dark, so that's got lots of different colours in. I will put a list of colours in the description for you. And I'm going to drop the brown in on top of the little line of foam. So the breaking foam on the beach is actually in 2 halves. Some of it seems to have picked up the sand, and then there's another bit that's just going splashing up. So it's actually more brown at the back than the front. So what I'll do is not starting at the edge this time, just giving some variety, putting the brown in. That's why you have to mix it up earlier, just on the top. Then I'll start in the middle again just to give more variety. If you're enjoying my videos, please hit like and subscribe, it does help. Change the aspect of the brush a little, make it more upright, just to give more variation. I'm just going to take that back a little bit with my finger. Same again, just do little stretches of it so that it's all different. Then I can go back here and just drop some little highlights in while it's still damp. It's like you've sort of just shaken up a bottle of fizzy drink. It's absolutely bubbling. So there's no straight edges in sight, it's just all fluid. And again, just put a few dropped highlights on here. Just every now and again, not on every one. Now the sand is purple. And there's some brown shadows on it as well. So I'm going to use Same two colours again. I'm going to use French ultramarine and Alizarin crimson, and then just drop that in, and it looks warmer than the sea. And then I'm going to add a little bit of cobalt violet just for variety, because that's warmer again, but not too much, just a little. As the focus of this picture is the waves, not the beach, but you need something there. Mixing up a little bit more because I don't want it all to be the same. Just going over that slightly just to break it up. And now go back to the top left, which actually hasn't got that much water showing under the sky, but it is actually quite green. So what I'm going to do is start with the Veridian and Indigo mix and just start where there's a crest of a wave, and it's quite dark there. It's difficult to tell whether there's another rock that's causing it to break like that. And then go along, and it gets slightly lighter, so I'm changing to lighter colour. I'm just using some of the beach colour added to it, and it gets lighter slightly, so I'll just use slightly weaker paint, the same colour. Go under the crest of the wave, make it a little bit darker, drop it in, and then it's going slightly bluer as it goes to the edge, so I'm going to change to a little bit more of French ultramarine and just drop that in. So now we've got semi-still water in the middle, which has got a variety of colours in, including a lot of white reflection. So I'm going to change to a number 4 brush and add a little bit of purpley blue. Because it's still, it's sort of almost slightly on the rebound, it's sideways strokes for a change. So I'll just put those in. And that also gives the emphasis on the curly water going the opposite direction. Then there's reflection coming up, so that's very dark. I'm going to use a little bit of indigo with the brown and the green, mix it all together to get a dark colour to go under this wave where it's causing a shadow. Just very, very narrow shadow going along. Then it changes to light. So what I have to do now is find, I think, just yellow ochre. There's probably some more sand that's got stirred up in it, and just drop that in, and that's made that quite prominent. The next step is to put some foam in the wave here that's breaking, and then I'll work my way across. It's not grey, it almost looks like light purple. Follow some of the lines. You just have to try and paint in the negative so that the white foam looks brighter. I'm just going to make that a little bit deeper. I'm using a number 4 brush with a good tip. And I'm going to put it on and then work it out. But anything that you can put on that's dark will make the white foam look better. So just a few little bits, then go back with the water. Then as it moves over to the big green area, it's all much darker blue. So I'm going to put that in and work back. Just make it a little bit more blue, a little bit French ultramarine. And then the water again. Just pull it back to infinity. You have to decide the degree of detail that you want in your picture, but every set of waves is different. So there's enough detail here that you can see the effect of making it look white. Now it's not just one area, it's lots of areas. So what I've got to do is to add a few little details, little specks around it to show that it's not just sort of sections that are coming down, but the whole thing's on the move. I'm not doing the whole area, I'm just doing suggestive areas just to give a hint. You have to do this with quite a dry brush, just little splashes, which is what they are. And you can always adapt it afterwards if you're not sure. You can always go along with a flat brush. This is just an off-the-shelf flat brush. And just put it back on a little bit and just ease the paint back off, just to give a softer edge. Doesn't do any harm to the paper, but it just moves it a little. Now coming further down, there's some quite dark lines, so I'm just going to add a little bit more French ultramarine and a little bit of the indigo. And with the same dry brush, just put a few more lines on, just every now and again. And then going back with just a clean brush, just blend them in a little bit. It's where the water's just having a rest before it goes mad again. And there's a little bit more yellow ochre that I can put in underneath here. And then this section here is more of just a solid purpley blue, so I'm just going to add some Zillion Crimson to the blue I've already got out. Just make a very, very weak colour and add it in, and then just add blue. A little bit of each just to mute the colour a little. And again, I'll go across to somewhere where I can make a natural break, which is about here. Then I've got a change in colour, so I'll just feather it out so it's not a solid edge. And come back. Add some more water. Because it is a solid area, it's not dappled. And that's got some dark lines in it as well, so I'll just drop some in just as a hint. Now moving up to the top again, I'm going to do this big green slice, and I've already prepared a colour for that, which is a very dark green. Just loosely follow my pencil lines. It was just a rough drawing to show you what I was doing. It's very, very dark. So what I'm going to do is just leave an area here and then change the paint slightly and make it darker where it's in its own shadow by adding a little bit of indigo. And there's a white line between the indigo, the darker green, and the top area. I'll just leave a gap. And the dark paint always makes the light look brighter. And then there's a white line going down it, which must be just sort of the surf breaking. I'll just suggest it. As I say, you have to decide on your level of detail. And there's lots of little lines there as though a wave's just broken up. And coming across, there's one wave just trying to break down the middle there, and then there's another white line. And I can actually make this first green one a bit darker because it's breaking, it's concave, so it's slightly darker underneath. And that makes all the little dapples I put in earlier sink back, but they're still relevant. So going up to the top line, it's much lighter. So I'm just going to add a little bit of chrome yellow to the green. It's lighter because it's catching the light differently and it's further away. So I'm just going to try that and see what it looks like. And it gets darker towards the top. So I'll drop in the dark paint, let it find its own way. I've got some waves giving spray, so it gets even darker. So I'm just adding some French ultramarine and indigo to the green and carrying along. A little bit more water. And it's quite dark all the way up to the rock. So I'll put that in, and I'm now going to make it stronger by dropping paint into the wet paint. And just drop it in and find its own way. And there's lots more dark in the middle here. There's a wave just sort of falling down to the right. So I'm going to pop that in, and that gives me a point of reference. You want to always have points of reference, otherwise you get a little bit lost, and that's why it's also important, if you can, to make the paint up first so that you can carry on seamlessly. Just put a little bit more on top to give a more of a solid edge. And you can see that the sea's developing there. And underneath here, now that I'm looking again, I can see that there are some very darks that are just showing. So while I've got the green on the brush, I can go back, just make some of those a little bit darker. And that all ties it together. So the next thing to do, I think, before I get completely lost in it, is to put the islands in, the rocks, which I'm going to use a little bit of indigo and some burnt sienna. I'll just find the shape of it first. This needs to be much darker so that the sea shows. Some Payne's grey into the top and just let it drop down. And it gives me a hard edge at the top, or darker edge, as sort of it's under silhouette. And then drop it down in up and down strokes to make it look like rock. And I'll do the pointy one as well. You can only really see half of that because the waves are hitting it. So put it in from the right. Let's move it across a bit. And then I've got the start of the very big rock next to it. And that's got several different colours on it. So I'm just going to add some burnt sienna, different lines to show the contours of it. And hasn't got so much breaking water on the left, so I'll put a line in and it bounces up to the right. Now in front of this rock there's a sweeping wave that's coming in, but I think I'll stick that in for reference because I can work everything else off from it. So I'm just tinting the green again, and it goes up at the right and down at the left, and then halfway around the rock it goes back up again, but in a different colour. So I'm just going to put a mark there to show where it changes colour, and it actually almost goes over the horizon here. And then it works forward, so I'm just going to put the shallower curve in first. And then as it goes up, it actually goes all the way up, but there's broken water with lots of white showing. And again, where it's dipping down, the water's just stopping here. So I'll just make that a bit stronger to give the double curve of the wave. Try and make it look convex in places and concave in others. That was a good surfer's wave. And then moving on, comes all the way up here, very dark, but in the middle it's blue, so I'm just going to use French ultramarine and pop that in. And again, that's going off at an angle and coming forward. So I'll just work the paint out to infinity so that I can come back to it. It's always important, if you find something, to put it in. And there's a different curve adding to this, so I'm just going to put the different curve in. It's curving in several directions. There's one wave breaking and another one coming. And that gives a nice highlight of blue. So while the waves over here are drying, I can come back to this very dark area, which has almost got a hole just under the point of the rock. So I need the very, very dark green again. And it's got a curved bottom to the wave. Peaks and troughs. I'm just going across to the underneath the big rock. Just putting in a few highlights that are easy to find in the water, as the water changes height quite significantly there. So I've just used a dark green, and I'm now going to just gently let it out slightly, bit of a lost edge. And the same working down here, it's changing height quite significantly. And then the rest of it is all blue, so going back to more of a French ultramarine, dropping the French ultramarine into it. And this bit where it changes height, there's lots of white, so I'm just going to leave spaces for now. And then coming across, it's very silvery blue, so I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. This is just weak French ultramarine. Just go round all the bubbling foam. And there's an area of white here that's sort of escaped, a little bit of rogue wave there, so I'll leave a gap for that. And then the rest goes up to meet it, so, well, it's coming down, I presume, so it's just upward slight strikes. And there is some white, so I'm leaving gaps. And I don't want it to be totally striped, so what I'm going to do is just get some slightly stronger blue and just alternate it so it looks more lively. I've used the strike down as a starting point. I'm just going to go across it. Now the water around here is really, really wild, so I've got lots and lots of different areas. So I'm going to start from the top again and work down. That the green actually gets very lost here, but I'm just going to put some upticks so that it joins. It's all so messy that it's a job to pick anything out. So I've got to join the white water underneath, which has almost got dark green stripes in it. I'll just put some of those in. And they continue over here. And then they change to blue in the middle, as that is blue. It's just obviously just a change in light. Just feather them out both ways. Now moving back to the really, really messy bit again, that's got lots of loose edges, and they are mostly blue. So I'm just going to go back to here where there's some broken surf again that's white. Put blue around the edge of it. And then in the middle, everything is moving sideways. But there's a lot of white foam. And there's more blue against the second lot of surf. But not that much. So I'm just show that it's collapsing down. I'm just putting upward strokes in to join it together. And that looks like the previous wave that sort of bounced back and got a bit lost. And again in here, and then moving across a little bit more, there's more white, so I'll leave a gap for the white, and more blue. So go round the top of the broken surf. I am rubbing the pencil lines out as I go to a certain extent, but it's so complex that it's worth having pencil lines in, otherwise you suddenly realise you've missed a huge part and it doesn't look right. And it's easier to start from the big section and work right. And there's another layer underneath. This is definitely a collapsing wave, and there's lots of spray coming off, which is not so easy to do. But I can clean wet brush and just put some speckles in to show that it is spraying off. A few little spikes of green there, and again in the middle here it's quite spiky. Doesn't quite know which way to splash. Just going to get a wet brush and just soften them a little. Now I can't do any more to that till it's dry and I've wiped the pencil off. But having looked at the picture overall, I think it needs a little bit more dark here. Some colours change when you put another one nearby. So moving forward to the breaking water here, it's mostly purple underneath. So I'm going to use French ultramarine and Alizarin crimson again. Make it very weak and go in from the edge. It's not purple all the way through. There's little bits of, I think, reflected light and perhaps a little bit of sand coming up. So I'll put the purple in and then I'll tint it. Changing the aspect of the brush to go on top of the first lot of surf. Just dropping some sand colour in there. And because it's yellow, it's Naples yellow, it'll find its own way. Now this foam isn't just white, it's got grey in it this time. So use a little bit of the homemade grey and just dapple it in from top to bottom, just little spots. Just taking a brush for a walk, changing to a bit of blue, going back with a little bit of blue just to give variety. Going back to the grey again. And then when it's dry, I'll take the pencil lines off with a putty rubber. A few little darks going in just to give variety. Every now and again there's quite a dark line somewhere. I'll just add a little bit more dark. Probably darker because it's under the green. And there's occasionally a sideways line as well. So I'm stuck now till it's dry, and then I can add a little bit more detail. To add a little bit more depth to the wet sand, I've just wet the paper slightly with a brush and clear water. I'm just dropping some blue paint in against the edge of the foam, and it's just bleeding away slightly. So I'll just go back with a little bit more water, just encourage it, and that gives a dark edge which makes the white foam look brighter. The next step is to add a little bit of highlight to the sand being chucked up here in the front row. I'm just using a little bit of Indian yellow, but you could use yellow ochre, just a tiny highlight. Don't need to do it all the way along. I haven't rubbed all the pencil out yet, and there's some brown marks on the sand which I can add. I'm going to use the same #1 brush and just some dark brown that's left over from other areas, and just pop it in. Sort of a reflection in a puddle. This is a brown that was left over from doing the rocks. It only goes so far, and then there's more of a puddle which is blue, so I'll just use a bigger brush, change to a #4, use French ultramarine, and just drop a little bit of a puddle in. You do get puddles on the beach, you know, little start of rock pools and things. Not all completely level, and there's some standing water in front of some of the brown marks, so I can put that in with the same blue. And again, that makes the foam look brighter. Don't want to do too much, so I'm just going to use some clear water just to brush it out to infinity. And then in the middle there's a few more nooks and crannies to find, but I'm going to rub the pencil out first. I've got a few more areas now that I've rubbed the pencil out in the middle here, which is just the waves churning about as they fall down. So just put a few little lines in just to break up the solid colour. And you can put as much or little detail in as you like. but it is all a chaotic scene. So I'll just try and show you how to put a little bit more here. I've just got some green on the brush, and as the waves are breaking, they're sort of leaving little traces like spiders' webs. So I'm just going to put some of those in, and then use the water just to lose a little bit of them so it's more subtle. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you'll try and go down to the beach in rough weather, not just with the deck chair.